Welcome to Building People, Companies, and Careers, brought to you by AccruePartners. I'm Amy Pack.
And I'm Patty Comer. We're your host on this journey through the vibrant business landscape in the Queen City.
This podcast is an extension of our mission statement at AccruePartners, where we have spent over 20 years fostering connections and building relationships.
Whether you're a client, candidate, or business influencer in Charlotte, this podcast is for you.
We are immensely grateful for your support throughout our journey, and now through this podcast, we're excited to share the stories that have defined our path.
So let's dive in.
Let's do it. Welcome back to Building People, Companies, and Careers, brought to you by AccruePartners. I'm your host, Amy Pack. At Accrue, we are passionate about bringing together candidates, consultants, clients, and thought leaders in the Charlotte community, Carolinas, and beyond. I am thrilled to have with me today Jill Mason, CHRO of Whistle Express.
It's great to be here today, Amy.
Yeah, so I look forward to it. So as we prepare to launch our 2026 salary guide, I'm excited to sit down with you and understand how you take the salary guide, the data, the market intelligence, the analytics, and determine how it shapes different facets of what you do at Whistle Express and the impact it made, and obviously any suggestions you might have. Every year it is a piece that we look forward to. Our clients and our candidates look forward to it as well. So before we sit down, I want to kick off with the great question that we always start off interviews with. Tell me about yourself.
Perfect. Well, I am a CHRO here in Charlotte at Whistle Express. We are one of the nation's largest express car wash operators. We are in 22 states. We've recently completed a large acquisition of another car wash company, so that's keeping us very busy right now. Personally, I'm a mom of two boys who keep me busy at home, and on the baseball fields is where you'll find me if I'm not at work.
And so, Jill, you started at Whistle just as this big acquisition took place. So I can only imagine the hustle and bustle in which you've been in, and now as we're approaching year end. So I guess with that being said, share with me what's taking place at Whistle from the workforce perspective and some of the projects that really keep you up at night these days.
Yeah, I'm just hitting 6 months, which has been fast. And so part of that was figuring out how do we create systems and programs and everything to bring two companies into one, because our company had grown through mergers and acquisitions. And so while we were not a small company by any means, we hadn't built the infrastructure to scale to that large acquisition that we did in April. So I've been working with the team to build a new Workday infrastructure, design new benefits, open enrollment, which kicks off on Friday. And so really prepare the talent and the people for 2026. So really these past 6 months has been about building the foundation and getting the culture ready to continue to grow.
Yeah, well, they couldn't have found anybody better. I mean, looking back on your history, you have a lot of experience in working with what I would call field employees in a dispersed workforce. And so that was a great combination of what you bring to a company that's had a big acquisition and continues to grow. Thinking about that, when you look at the salary guide and when you use the tool, what stands out to you the most?
I think it's such a great tool. It's a succinct guide that has so much data packed into it. It gives you market trends. It gives you functional trends. The salary data, there's a lot in there. So if you're somebody who's looking for information quickly that's going to help you figure out what you need to know at like a snap, versus having to dig through hundreds and hundreds of research pages out there. That's what I really appreciate about the salary guide. I also have a lean team. I don't have an in-house compensation group. So it really helps me gut check what the market is and really make sure that we're making the right decisions.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So we launched this in December, then we will do a mid-year, but we do really pride ourselves on giving real market data. As you said, you could buy reports, they're hundreds and hundreds of pages, but it's not specific to the Charlotte market or the region for that matter. And every region has its own little nuances. We always say the market speaks to us when we interview candidates, and that's really where we pull our information from. So I guess when you use the tool in evaluating compensation and working with other leaders in finance, how do you find that works for you in the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the tool's a really good gut check about when you're trying to find the right person for the right role, you certainly don't want to overpay or underpay for the position. You spend a lot of time recruiting and making sure that you get it correct. And people want to make sure that they're accepting a role, they're accepting a compensation that they feel good about as well. And so I think that having that conversation internally and aligning on here's what we're going to pay for this role, because these are the skills that are important to us. We've determined this is what we have inside our company, and these are the roles that we're going to have to go out and look for because we don't have the skills internally to be able to fill that. And so getting finance and your internal executives aligned on these are the important things to invest on, but these are what they're worth out there in the market. And I think that salary guide is really a good gut check to be able to say, here's what at least we're seeing in the Charlotte market, to know that this is what the other companies are paying.
Yeah. Do you ever get any pushback internally?
I haven't gotten a lot of pushback, and I think it's because I'm trying to build structure and process around something that we really didn't have a lot before, and just because we didn't need it at the time. We really weren't investing a lot into back office positions. As I mentioned, we were growing through mergers and acquisitions, so the focus really was on the field, the frontline leadership, and so we really hadn't had to put a lot of intentionality into what we were doing in the back office. So for us to really be able to scale, that's what we've needed to do these past couple months.
Yeah, you've had a big focus on that. When you find that you're extending offers, in 2022, compensation was just so extraordinarily inflated. That really carried over into 2023. There's been some right sizing of that. Are you feeling any of that pressure from then, or do you feel like things are normalizing for the organization or from what the candidates you're interviewing?
I think things are starting to normalize a bit more right now. I think this is the first time I'm kind of seeing it look like it's a bit more even as far as a candidate and an employer market. In the past, it felt like it was definitely much more candidate driven. And now it feels like it's a bit more even. And as you get to really look at what are you offering, it's not just your base salary, it's your, what are your bonus packages? What are your total rewards packages? What's the whole package of why someone wants to come join your organization? Do they see the growth potential? Can they be a part of something, a bigger picture, not just, am I coming to collect a paycheck? And so you really start to see what people want is starting to shift. And I think that could be a generational thing.
Yeah, certainly. Now, when you look at the functional org chart and where you're filling positions in corporate or the support center, which did you call it? Support center. Okay. Are you finding that you're having more challenges or compression in IT versus HR or accounting or marketing, or would you say it's pretty even?
I think it's pretty even. And like I said, I think that compression's starting to go down a bit, but as we're raising the bar on talent, certainly you're going to invest a bit more as you start to add in more senior level positions. We were a fairly flat organization prior as well. Mm-hmm. So positions are going to scale with the level. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we're starting to see a little bit of it.
Yeah. So speaking of which, obviously you're using in planning, but when you're adding new jobs or replacing, are you making modifications there?
We are, and I think that's where the conversation with finance comes into play too. And it's how do we start to look at things a little bit more further out, knowing that, it's the age-old trick. You set the budget at the beginning of the year, or quite honestly, even at the end of the year prior. And so you think this is what you need from a workforce capability standpoint, and things can change just as quickly as the budget sets. Yeah. The world changes, right? A new project comes in, somebody leaves and you realize, man, like this is a big skill set that we've been missing and we have to invest in that. Mm-hmm. And so having those internal conversations, and sometimes it's a trade-off of, okay, well, we can invest in that, we can pay more for that, but is there a place that we have to offset that cost? Because you can't always just add.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, at some point you just got to stop. So is there an example where you've had the opportunity to use the salary guide and it allowed you to get a quicker, faster decision to advance forward?
Absolutely, even on my own team. And so recently we were adding some in-house recruiters to focus on the field. I had an idea about what I thought that the role should pay just based off of some experience, talked with your team who was the one sourcing for the role for us. And we were able to kind of align on what that market should be. And ultimately I had a pipeline of 10 candidates. And so I think that really helped reinforce that the salary guide and what we came to from a market standpoint was the right amount to go to.
So as we begin to enter 26, Jill, and you look at the workforce that you'll need going into the new year, how are you using the guide to manage the pressure and the shifts in skills, especially with AI coming into play? You know, we all say you interview for skills and then there's the culture, but now with AI and technology changing so much, you've got to be able to interview people to their level of curiosity, adaptability. And so how does that play into all of this as you plan for next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, it goes back to what's your strategy? What's your company needing to do? And what are you looking to do in the next 12 to 18 months? And you really have to line up that strategy against your workforce and determine what roles are going to help you get there. And you look at your team and you say, where are my gaps? And then you determine these are the skills that are really going to be critical for us delivering on that strategy from a corporate standpoint. And then I think from a field side for us, we've really looked at what are our compensation practices and we did a full compensation study to say, are we investing in the right elements of compensation? As I mentioned earlier, base, bonus, et cetera, commission plans. Are those the things that are motivating the right behaviors and sending the right things from our team and ultimately to our customer experience? So we're excited. We've got lots of new things for 2026. I can't share them with you yet because we haven't told our team, but I'm hopeful it's going to continue to advance our culture, our practices, and continue to make our customer service even better.
Yeah, that's exciting. So 26 will be a big year.
26 is going to be a great year.
Yeah. So you have open enrollment is starting this Friday, but that's for 26. Okay. So hopefully your team will hear this and know there's exciting things coming.
I think they will.
Or the organization, I should say.
I think they will. You know, we are definitely on the right path. We're on the path of scalability, on the path of growth, and to continue to bring two companies together as we integrate two brands into one.
Yeah, that's exciting. So if you were talking to another HR leader and they were trying to determine the challenges they may be having internally or determining best how to use it, what would be some advice you might give them?
Yeah, I would tell them to think about, again, go back to your company strategy. What are you trying to accomplish? Think about your functional teams. It's not a one size fits all in terms of applying it the same way to each role. Thinking about what is it that you need out of your finance team. Then using that salary guide to say, what are the trends that you're seeing in finance? How is it applying to the roles? Do I even have these roles staffed as part of my team? And do I even need them for our company? Because to your point earlier, you talked about AI, you talked about some of the things that are coming in. Is that a different opportunity to augment the people, the skills that you have? Right. And then take that same approach across each of your functions, leverage what the salary guide is telling you about the trends, the data, the positions, and it really allows you to think about where do you want to invest your dollars in positions versus where can you scale technology in a different way and really think about technology as part of your workforce so that those dollars can go even further.
Right. Always say it's not one brick in, one brick out, one brick in today's environment. But so many companies are still functioning that way. And so they don't revise what the overview of the job is or the comp, but then they wonder why they're not gaining any productivity or A-level talent for that matter.
100%. You can't just backfill the role that left. And because when you do that, you are staying stagnant. And the world's not stagnant. Your strategy's not stagnant.
Right.
And you've got to take every opportunity, every position as an opportunity to continue to evolve with where your company is, not just today, but for tomorrow.
Right. So I guess deviating from that a little bit, how do you approach that in the ever-changing market today to try to stay up on what the jobs and roles should look like so that you're keeping your teams and your people motivated, challenged, and continuing to learn and to attract the best people?
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I think there's, constantly staying close to the research that's out there. I think the salary guide, again, the trends that are there is another piece of it. I don't have a full in-house recruiting team either. So, your team was really helpful for me in being able to do that and telling me what they're seeing in the market and what some of the other local companies are doing as well. And so I think it's kind of putting it all together to figure out what exactly makes the most sense for us and then having those conversations with the leadership team.
Yeah, I do find it when we put the salary guide together every year, there's always one new title in every piece of the salary guide, whether it's a new title in accounting or some slight modification. And there's always one comp role where the comp has changed significantly. And it's always fun. It's fun and interesting to see what's the driving factor behind all of that.
I would say from a title and a job architecture and all of that standpoint, go back to the basics. The jobs are really not that different. And that, I think that's going to help make benchmarking against that salary guide so much easier. Every leader thinks that this job is so different and so unique, but when you get down to the core of it, for me, I try to apply the 80-20 rule. If 80% of the job is the same, call it that title. You can go and look for some specific technology or some specific experiences that the person had. But at the end of the day, a project manager is a project manager.
Right.
But getting creative with the titling, you're actually going to narrow your candidate pool.
Yeah. Well, and, at least on our end, when titles, first of all, title, just because you have a title at this company doesn't mean the person's doing the same over here. But then candidates do get a little bit concerned if titles get too out of the mainstream, if they have to go look for another job, how that's going to show up. And they are conscientious of not changing their title to mirror the market, because then it could be a bad reflection that they're not being honest, which that wasn't necessarily the case. So I do think, your advice of just keeping it simple.
Yeah. And then leverage the data, because you can't benchmark against the salary guide, against external market data, if you are getting super creative with those titles.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing is when companies try to take 3 jobs and cram them into one. I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. Nobody else has this. So out of these 3 jobs, what is the most important to you?
Yes. And where are you willing to compromise?
Yeah.
We're having that conversation internally right now. One of my leaders, he's looking for a specific position to fill. And, yesterday he said, I think I'm looking for a unicorn. It's like, okay, well, how can we break the role apart? What are the non-negotiables? What are the most critical things that we need in the job? And maybe what else can we split out into a second job?
Right.
Or what can we outsource?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll be fascinating. The world's operating at a fast pace. So, well, I would certainly say Whistle is doing everything that the podcast is titled, Building People, Companies, and Careers. You're building people as the organization's changing, as technology's changing. You're building people through that and creating careers for so many people at all levels of the organization. So much to be proud of.
We are very excited about where we're headed.
Yeah. So let's move to the rapid fire questions, which are always the fun part. So tell us, what is your first career memory?
Oh, my first career memory. I think my first career memory is when I graduated from college. I started with Target, and their training program was a business college. And so just kind of going from school college into training college. Right. That's the first thing, I really remember of my first real job.
Mm-hmm. I was just talking to someone else recently, another HR professional here in Charlotte, who also started her career at Target. And they do have an amazing program. And they have quite a group of alumni here in Charlotte itself.
Yeah, Target has a great training program, great foundation. I always say I was fortunate enough to start my career there. I spent over 14 years with the company, and I'm glad I learned what good looks like there, and I've been able to take it and apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a great transition. Do you have a memory of a good boss or a not so great boss?
I've got both. I would say 90% of the leaders I've worked for, I'm so fortunate to have worked for some amazing people who I have stayed in contact with, have been mentors for me during different points in my career, and have really continued to help me grow and be a part of some really pivotal decisions that I've made in my career. And I still keep in contact with them, both personally and professionally. I think I've really only had one bad boss that I could say. And all I would attribute that to is I thought it was normal that you'd go to work every day, you would do what was expected to you, and crying was part of the daily job.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, every day.
No, we're not doing that.
Nope.
Yeah, well, I know 1 or 2 of your past bosses, and so you have worked for some amazing people. I didn't know the ones at Target, but so at least you've learned what good and bad looks like, right?
I always say you learn as much from the bad as you do from the good.
Yeah. So what is one saying that you're most known for?
Oh, I asked my team this because I had to really think through it. And I guess now my team would say, we're small but mighty. I say it all the time.
Yeah. Well, hey, there's something to be said for that. And now, what is your favorite restaurant, lunch spot? I mean, at one time you were in North Charlotte, now you're in the South Park area, but you live in South Charlotte, so I'm sure there's a variety.
Well, if you ask anybody who knows me, they would tell you that's probably the question I dread the most. I'm not a huge foodie. I actually am a very plain eater, so I would rather anybody else pick but me. I can find something anywhere, just don't make me pick the restaurant.
Got it. Well, is there a type of food that you prefer?
Nope, just plain.
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 All right, we're sticking with plain. Great. Well, Jill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was great.